हरि बोल नित्य गौरा हरि बोल। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंसा परिविचार्य अस्वत्रसत श्री श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस अबे चन्नरविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रीला प्रभुपाद की, आनंद कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की, नामाचार्य श्रीला हरिदास ठाकुर की, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा श्रीवासुदि गौर भक्त वृंद की, श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की, वृंदावन धाम की, मथुरा धाम की, जगन्नाथ स्वामी की, श्रीमती तुलसी देवी की, सामवेद भक्त वृंद की, निताई गौर प्रेमानंदी। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bir Krishna Goswami Niti Namne Namo Hamsa Nikashaya Prabhupada Priyate Srubdashti Nishtha Bem Tasya Vakyanuvadine. Okay, Hare Krishna. And good morning. Welcome to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class at Sri Radha Gopinath Temple, North Sydney. Welcome to all our online viewers in Mayapur TV and ISKCON YouTube, ISKCON Sydney YouTube and Facebook. So this morning we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 26. Chapter 26 is titled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature. And we are reading from the second text, text 2. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nasta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Okay. Jnanam Nishreya Sarthaya Purushyatma Darshanam Purushastyatma Darshanam Yad Ahur Varnaya Tatte Hirdaya Granti Vedanam Jnanam Nishreya Sarthaya Purushasyatma Darshanam Yad Ahur Varnaye Tatte Hridaya Granthi Bhedanam Jnanam Nishreya Sarthaya Purushasyatma Darshanam Yad Ahur Varnaye Tatte Hirdaya Granthi Bhedanam Jnanam Nishreya Sarthaya Purushasyatma Darshanam Yad Ahur Varnaya Tatte Hridaya Granthi Vedanam Jnanam Nishreya Sarthaya Purushasyatma Darshanam Yadahurvarnaya tatte Hirdaya Granti Bhedanam Jnanam Nisheshya Sathaya Purushasya-atmadarshanam Yadahurvarnaya tatte Hirdaya Granti Bhedanam. Okay, Jnanam, knowledge. Nishreyasya arthaya, for the ultimate perfection. Purushasya, of a man. Atma darshanam, self-realization. Yat, which. Ahu, they said. Varnai, I shall explain. Tat, that. Te, to you. Hirdaya, in the heart. Granthi, the knots. Bhedanam, cuts. Okay, so we've got the translation and the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, the translation for the shlok this morning is, knowledge is the ultimate perfection of self-realization. I shall explain the knowledge unto you by which the knots of attachment to the material world are cut. So we can all repeat. Knowledge is the ultimate perfection of self-realization. I shall explain that knowledge unto you by which the knots of attachment to the material world are cut. Okay, so the purport. It is said that by proper understanding of the pure self or by self-realization, one can be freed from material attachment. Knowledge leads one to attain the ultimate perfection of life and to see oneself as he is. The Svetashvatara Upanishad 3.8 also confirms this. Tam eva viditvati mrityum eti. Simply by understanding one's spiritual position or by seeing oneself as he is, one can be freed from material entanglement. In various ways, the seeing of oneself is described in the Vedic literatures and it is confirmed in the Bhagavatam. Purushasya Atma Darshanam, that one has to see oneself and know what he is. One has to see oneself and know what he is. As Kapil Dev explains to his mother, this seeing can be done by hearing from the proper authoritative source. That's interesting. This seeing, so here it is, telling us that we can see just by hearing. And what are we seeing? We are seeing ourselves. And we see ourselves as we are, what we are. And that's the path of self-realization. How you realize the self, who you are, what you are. And you see yourself just by hearing. So you hear not from anyone, but the proper authoritative source. So Kapila Dev is the greatest authority because he is the personality of Godhead. He is Krishna. And if someone accepts whatever is explained as it is without interpretation, then he can see himself. So here, Lord Krishna is going to play a huge role in telling you exactly who you are, what you are. He's in the avatar of Kapil Dev. So Lord Chaitanya explains to Sanatan Goswami the real constitutional position of the individual. He said directly that each and every individual soul is eternally a servitor of Krishna. So there you go. We recite that in the Sikshastakam, right? Every morning. Oh Krishna, I'm your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I've fallen into the ocean of birth and death. So here it is repeated that every individual soul, not just you or selected souls, every individual soul is eternally a servitor of Krishna. Jivera Swarupa, Haya Krishnera Nitya Dasa. Every individual soul is eternally a servitor. When one is fixed in that understanding that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Soul and that his eternal position is to serve in association with the Supreme Lord, he becomes self-realized. So if you want to know what is self-realized simply means you realize you are the servitor of Lord. This position is rightly understanding oneself. It cuts the knots of material attraction, Hirdaya Granthi Bhedanam. Due to false ego or false identification of oneself with the body and the material world, one is entrapped by Maya. But as soon as one understands that he is qualitatively the same substance as the Supreme Soul, Supreme Lord, because he belongs to the same category of the Spirit Soul, and that his perpetual position is to serve, one attains Atma Darshanam and Hirdaya Granthi Bhedanam, self-realization. When one can cut the knot of attachment to the material world, his understanding is called knowledge. Atma Darshanam means to see oneself by knowledge. Therefore, when one is freed from the false ego by the cultivation of real knowledge, he sees himself, and that is the ultimate necessity of human life. So what is the necessity of human life? That one is freed from false ego by the cultivation of what? Real knowledge. And you see yourself. And that really is the necessity of human life. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. The soul is thus isolated from entanglement of the 24 categories of material nature. Pursuit of the systematic philosophic process is called Sankhya. Pursuit of the systematic philosophic process is called Sankhya, is called knowledge and self-revelation. So that ends the purport. Mangal Charan. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svak Padantikam. Vande Ham Shri Gurum Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deen Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishbhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is really giving you this morning, as the title suggests, principles of material nature. And we all are in the material world. There's a song, right? We all live in the yellow submarine. There's a song, Yellow Submarine, if you've heard of that song. It's a nursery rhyme, so it's not a Bollywood or anything like that. We used to recite it. The song says, we are all in the yellow submarine. In other words, you, me, the cat, the dog, the bird, everyone is in all material nature right now, material nature. So I was reading about it last night, and I thought, we'll actually give some examples exactly what it is in the material nature, how to deal with it, how did we get here, what is the difference between material nature, spiritual nature, what should we do about it, how it affects us, and what is knowledge got to do with it. Basically, knowledge is useless unless it's applied, right? And we talked about this some classes back. Like if I were to give you knowledge on how to build a rocket, you write it down, keep it there in the book or in your computer, store it away, do nothing about it, the rocket will never materialize. So the knowledge, which however much we read it or theoretically we collect it and write it down, it's not going to be useful unless it's applied. So it's got to be practiced. I was reading and listening to Srila Prabhupada's class. So this class this morning is actually inspired by, it's basically Srila Prabhupada's class. He's given this class. So if you go into YouTube, you'll find it. So he started off, Srila Prabhupada started off by, because this entire shlok is about jnanam. So he said, what is jnanam? Any ideas what is jnanam? Jnanam. Knowledge, yes. And Srila, it's essentially right, knowledge. And Srila Prabhupada starts off by saying jnanam basically is consciousness of the living entity's symptoms. Let me just keep this one open so I can refer to it. Consciousness, he said. In other words, he described, he said, I'll quote it. See, he says, jnanam means consciousness of living symptoms. And this jnana, another name for jnana is chetana. Chetana. And chetana means consciousness also. And there are two types of consciousness, or two types of chetana. What are they? It's quite fairly obvious. One is conscious and one is unconscious. In other words, the person sitting here is conscious, like I'm living. And the thing that I'm sitting on is unconscious. In other words, Srila Prabhupada described it like, there's a table is unconscious, right? And so if you move the table here and there, it's not going to protest that I don't want to be moved to the right or to the left. But if on that table there's an ant, a little ant, you try to move the ant this way, that way, it's going to escape. It's going to protest. I don't want to move here. I don't want you to touch me. So there's consciousness in a little ant, and there's unconsciousness. And why he was talking about consciousness or unconsciousness is the knowledge side of it, the knowledge aspect of it. In other words, this table, which is not conscious, cannot have knowledge, cannot understand, cannot protest. It's inanimate. And anything that's conscious has got the ability to absorb knowledge. Even the tiniest event, and it was really, really nicely explained by Srila Prabhupada. He said, knowledge, jnana, the little ant knows, right? Even the little ant knows that it's been moved here and there. It should escape, defend itself, right? So the element of defense is there. Nobody taught the ant how to defend itself. It knows by itself. It's inbuilt. Eating, nobody has taught us. Eating, how to eat. We all know how to eat from the moment we are born. All living entities, from the ant to us. So Prabhupada was like trying to differentiate. So why do we need knowledge when something from the tiniest of ants to us? We already have certain knowledge on how to eat, how to mate, how to defend, how to sleep, the four factors of living entities. And so he then described the evolution process after that. Because he said, from the ant, insects, you see, he actually started from the sand on the beach. He said on the sand on the beach, there are living and inanimate objects. They know what to do. They have the knowledge of how to go about living their lives. That's a living entity. And then he said, on the sand, there's like herbs, plants. They also know how to grow. They're not so conscious, but still, they're better than the table, for example. So then he said, after that, the little insect is there, and it grows wings, so it becomes a small bird. Still, so the consciousness now is improving from the herbs, the plant, to those living entities in the sand and the beach, to those insects. And then from those things that grow wings, after that, the bird. And from the bird, you become an animal, and from the animal, somewhere in there's some aquatics there too, the fish and things. The bird, the animal, and finally human life. So he was saying that's the evolution process. So why he was talking about evolution process was something to do with consciousness. At every stage, our consciousness becomes better than the last one. In other words, even though we have innate knowledge of eating, sleeping, defending, mating, we know all that right from the beginning, our consciousness becomes better and better to absorb something that's more than that. Something that's more than that. So then he very beautifully described, and hopefully I can... actually, I will quote something from the Bhagavad Gita, if you want to see where knowledge, one thing, highest perfection, action, he has ones like the case series, knowledge, sorry about that. I think it's 7.19, Bhagavad Gita. Yes. So what Prabhupada was trying to describe to us in his own examples from the evolution process, from something that's conscious, unconscious, to living entities, from the small ants right down to the human beings, he was basically illustrating the point that is given in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna. And the reference for that is Bhagavad Gita 7.19. Bhagavad Gita 7.19, and that's Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gyanavan Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Su Durlabha. And that means, what that really means is, after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. And such a great soul is very rare. The living entities, while executing devotional service or transcendental rituals, after many, many births, may actually become situated in transcendental pure knowledge. So Prabhupada was basically telling us that you go from, the herbal plant on the sand, to those things that are creeping around in the sand, those living entities, to those insects, to the birds, to the fish, aquatics, animals, finally the human beings. So after so many births, then you get the opportunity to be able to be in a human being. And even in the human being, he described something. He said, when you become humans, you are also categorized. You are either Shudra, right? Vaishya. What else is there? Kshatriya, and then Brahman. So you are different. You have different categories of men. So a Shudra is unable to absorb so much knowledge. And then there is a second one is Vaishya. The Shudra, the reason why they can't absorb this knowledge is because of that factor, material nature. They are more influenced by material nature than, say, the Brahmin. How so? It is the practice of Krishna consciousness, the practice of bhakti, practice of devotional service. So the ant would not be able to do such things, right? Even though it says any living entity has a right, has the ability to become Krishna conscious. But even in the class of category of men, so it's better to be a Brahmin, practicing Brahmin. If you really are interested in absorbing the knowledge, like I described in the beginning, knowledge is pretty much useless if it cannot be applied. So you could give all the knowledge to a Shudra, but if he's not practicing, it's pretty much useless. But if you give the same knowledge to the Brahmin, then they're practicing, and that knowledge really becomes perfect and leads them to the path of perfection. So that's really what this knowledge is all about. And let me just continue with what Srila Prabhupada had said, because it was really interesting that I was able to read it, and now I can share it with you. So he actually said this knowledge in humans, if we don't incorporate Now let me discuss a little bit about material nature, because it has got everything to do with the material nature. Now, Prabhupada described this, what is material nature and what is spiritual nature. Material nature is that which has got no God. Material nature is the absence of Krishna. That's material nature. That's a material world, rather. Not the nature, but the world. It's sort of same thing. Material world is one which has the absence of Krishna. In comparison to the spiritual world, which has Krishna. The presence of Krishna, presence of God. So he said, because we are in the material world right now, and there is absence of God, we are unable to absorb this knowledge. So the only knowledge we are able to observe really is what the ant has. This is really, really heavy, because he compared us to the small ant. He said the ant knows how to sleep, eat, mate, and defend, and so do people, humans who are in the material world. They're doing exact same thing. Nothing different. If there is no God in their world. So he said even the scientists and the so-called philosophers of this material world and the businessmen, everyone basically are finding new methods to sleep better, to eat better, to defend better, to mate better. And he described that, he said, you work, then girl meets boy. It was very, very graphically, and very clearly. He said, the girl meets boy, then they, they have a sex life, then they go into an apartment, and then, they have children. Basically, it is all the same thing, like the animal, really. They, the girl dog meets the boy dog. They fall in love. They have little puppies. Same thing. So he was saying the material world has got this basic knowledge. And so what shall we do to come out of this category of being like better than animals? So he said, because we are not in a spiritual world, right? This is not the spiritual world at the moment. We are all, just like we are all in the yellow submarine. We are all in the material world. So what to do? So then he gave this example, a wonderful example. And he himself said in the class, he said, this is a very good example. And the example was, he said, if you take an iron rod, this is an iron rod. I think it's made of iron. So an iron rod, and you put it in the fire. And it will get warm, then it will get hot. The longer you put it in the fire, it will get really, really hot, burning hot. To the point that the iron rod becomes just like fire. So you put that, really, really burning hot rod anywhere, it will burn. And he said the business of fire is to burn. So he said similarly, in the material nature, which does not have God, right? It does not have Krishna. But if you brought Krishna in the material world, then it becomes a spiritual world. That was Prabhupada's solution. For us to be better than the animal situation. In a situation that is better than the animal situation. In other words, apart from the knowledge of eating, mating, sleeping, defending, that kind of thing, we learn more is by bringing Krishna in the material world. And he said, just like the iron rod, you burn in the fire of Krishna consciousness. You you keep yourself in the fire of Krishna consciousness. And you shall remain in the spiritual world despite being present in the material world. And he said it's a very good example. So he was trying to, Srila Prabhupada, why he was doing that, obviously, is to deliver us from the evolution process, going from the ant to whatever, like the Bhagavad Gita says, that after many births, many births, and has anyone got any idea how many births they've had until this point? I don't. I don't know how many births I've taken to be able to be here in this body and be Krishna conscious, and we have the good fortune to be initiated by a representative of Srila Prabhupada, and it's Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Lord Krishna or Lord Kapila Dev, who is preaching here the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy is simply what we are reading right now. So Srila Prabhupada said in his class, if we learn how to assimilate the Sankhya philosophy or understand all these philosophies in the Srimad Bhagavatams and Vedic literatures, then our life will be successful. Which is what we are trying to do today, is to have a successful spiritual life, so that we differentiate ourselves from the animals, really, and bring ourselves to a point of absorbing this knowledge so we can actually apply it. So what kind of knowledge? And he was really like funny and amusing too. He cracked a joke. He said, all kinds of knowledge is out there, but we need, the joke he said was, somebody has, I don't know, in that age, it must have been the 1970s, somebody had developed a technique of eating from petrol. Petrol, how can you eat? It is a consumable from petrol. So they were putting petrol in some kind of food stuff. So he said, that's knowledge, that's not knowledge. So he was describing the knowledge, and it's this written here, Nishre Sharthaya. So he said, Shreya. Shreya means the ultimate goal of life. And the opposite of Shreya is Preya. Preya, Preya, which simply means meeting your needs, actually. Just meeting your needs, as opposed to the ultimate goal of life. And Jnanam. So we need the Jnanam. Why he was explaining that was, he said, you need the Jnana, you need the knowledge that applies to the ultimate goal of life. Ultimate goal of life. Not the one that teaches you how to consume by using petrol. Not those things. It's just teaching us how to eat better. Although how it's better, I wouldn't know. Petrol is not good for you. So he said we need the Gyan, or the knowledge, to make us Shreya, the ultimate goal of life. What is the ultimate goal of life? So then he said, where is that knowledge? So I have got a reference for you that tells us where you will get that knowledge. And I think you already know anyway, right? It says let's see, the highest, So the reference I got was from Bhagavad Gita 8.15. 8.15 says, by attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Now, what is the highest perfection? It is also in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.3. What it says, and this is a good one, because we are doing that. We are getting knowledge, right? The knowledge that Srila Prabhupada says we need. Not just any knowledge, perfect knowledge. We are getting it, some knowledge from Srimad Bhagavatam. And it is confirmed here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And we all know Sukadev Goswami, who is from the spiritual world, has imparted this knowledge. He says, "O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literature. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami, therefore the fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice already is relishable, for for all, including liberated souls. So even liberated souls, they relish the knowledge given in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, if you read the first canto, 1.1.2, chapter 1, text 2, also, it says, this beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity is sufficient in itself for God realization. Is sufficient for God realization. In other words, if you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you don't need to read anything else. It's sufficient. What is the need of other, and it's written here, what is the need of any other scripture? It's in the purport. As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of the Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. In fact, this is the essence of whatever we are reading today, text 2. Now, God realization, self-realization is Atma Darshanam, which is the second line of this shlok, right? And, and established within his heart, Hirdaya Granthi. Hirdaya Granthi in the last line of this shlok, Hirdaya means in the heart. So this knowledge goes straight to the heart. Now, why are we talking about the heart? Why do we need the knowledge in the heart? There's a very good answer for that. This purport says, there are knots of attachment. You know, knot, you tie a knot. There are knots of attachment in the heart. And what is this knot of attachment? To the material nature, to the material world. And Srila Prabhupada explained it very simply. He said, there's a husband, there's a wife, they have kids. So the husband says, out of all the millions of women, my wife is the best. She will never forget me, and I will never forget her. So there is attachment there. Husband, wife. He just gave one example. There could be other attachments, different kinds of material. We have family, relatives, all kinds of attachment. So he used the husband-wife example. And he said, so there is a knot in the heart. The attachment is in the heart because my heart belongs to her, him, whatever. So the knot's in the heart. So then we need this knowledge to go straight to the heart to cut the knots, to cut the attachments, which is what Devahuti here is asking her son, Lord Krishna, Kapiladev, to help her cut these attachment knots. So Kapildev comes up with this philosophy and he tells her, this is what you do. What is it that you do? You become Krishna conscious. You become a devotee. You will attain perfection simply by practicing bhakti yoga, chanting Hare Krishna, Mahamantra, become a devotee. And you get that knowledge from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which goes straight to the heart, because the Srimad Bhagavatam is perfection of all Vedic literatures, quoted in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I gave you a reference. Really. So that was why the heart was mentioned here. And even in when we recite the Shikshastakam, right? Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So he was saying we need to clean the heart. We are told every day, purify the heart by chanting, regular chanting, regular chanting. But that's not all, actually. After the regular chanting, we need the knowledge. And the knowledge you get from perfect Vedic of literatures, any Vedic literature. Not just the Srimad Bhagavatam, you've got others, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, and the rest of the Puranas too, bona fide ones. You need perfect literature, Vedic literature, to give you perfect knowledge. What is it called? Nishreya Sarthaya, perfect knowledge. The ultimate goal of life. The knowledge that applies to the ultimate goal of life. So you need that. And you need the knowledge, then you need to apply it. As soon as you start applying it, it renounces you, it cuts the knot of attachment. Then you come out of this material world. And you start living in a spiritual world. Because in your world, Krishna is present. Just like the iron rod. So you become like the iron rod, burning in the fire of Krishna consciousness. So you no longer are in the category of that ant or the bird, which has the knowledge of just the basic ultimate, prayer, ultimate, just satisfying your needs. And that's what Srila Prabhupada was saying. And he said, if we can assimilate this Sankhya philosophy that Kapila Dev is giving us in the Srimad Bhagavatam teachings of Kapila Dev, if you can assimilate that, then your life is successful. And he goes on to say, we've got a few minutes, so I'll just describe a little bit. He goes on to say that this Vedic literature is just like a kalpa vriksha. Kalpa vriksha is like a desire tree. Sometimes devotees are desire trees, a pure devotee, a good devotee. But he said the knowledge is also like that. Because Vedic literature will fulfill all your wishes and desires. And he said, once we start reading the Vedic literature, we realize the nature of the spiritual world, what's that's like. He said, in the spiritual world, this is Srila Prabhupada, he said the houses in the spiritual world is made of touchstone. Touchstone, what does that do? Whatever you touch it with, it becomes gold. So then he cracked a joke, because apparently in India there is a Tata iron industries. I don't know, I'm not from there, so I don't know. But he said if you take the entire Tata factory, iron factory, to the spiritual world, and in the touchstone it will become a gold factory. So all the iron will become gold. Then he laughed. Or he said you bring a touchstone from the spiritual world and everything will become gold. So he said the houses over there is made of touchstone. And he said the trees there are desire trees. So he said, if you look at a tree here, a mango tree will only give you mangoes. A coconut tree will only give you coconuts. Apple tree will only give you apples. In other words, the apple tree is not going to give you bananas. The apple tree will not give you mangoes. But the trees in the spiritual world, it gives you everything. Apples, bananas, mangoes, coconuts, whatever you want. And he said there is not only one tree, there's a jungle full of trees. See, so he compared that with Africa. The jungles in Africa is the big tall trees and many, many trees. He said it's like a jungle, you could say, in the spiritual world, full of kalpavriksha trees, desire trees. You can get any. And Krishna is there with his cows, and he looks after his cows, Surabhi cows. And he said, Surabhi cows, you can milk anytime. He's giving you milk all the time. He said, Krishna is Gopala, one who looks after the cows. And he's Govinda, he gives pleasure to the cows and the senses. So he's describing the spiritual world, and that's where you will live. You won't have any problems of finding food like you do here, or paying the rent, or whatever it is people are struggling for. It's all there in the kalpavriksha trees. You actually won't even need it anyway. And he said, people are looking for happiness in the material world. That's why, we are endeavoring whatever we are endeavoring, but we are not really happy. The reason we are not happy is because it's temporary, first of all, and is absence of Krishna. You'll never be happy. But once you attain the spiritual world and you are in the land of kalpavriksha trees and touchstone houses, and Krishna is there dancing with the gopis and, looking after cows, eternal happiness. So, and that happiness never ends, never stops. So he was saying, if you read this Vedic literature, and why he was telling us this, understanding the spiritual world, is then you get an idea how miserable these conditions are, life conditions are, material world. And there's really no point in looking for happiness here. Even though you might say, well, this such and such person is a wonderful person, I'm so happy with them, life is great. I've got money, lots of money in the bank account, or I've now finally got the PR I've been looking for. Permanent residency. Actually, a permanent residency is really temporary residency. You're going to die one day, because there I go again telling people you'll die one day. But it's true. It's temporary residency. So, he was trying to actually tell us, you read the Vedic literature, you'll understand the nature of the spiritual world. And then you will want to get out of here and live in a place where there are desire trees, where there is Krishna, and there's a lot of happiness there. And then it kind of ties up with what we are inside, which is the Atma Darshanam, which is what we are doing right now. Today, I'm reading from Srimad Bhagavatam to give you the knowledge of Atma Darshanam, self-realization, what you are.
What you really are, you don't belong in the material world. That's the self-realization. You don't belong in the material world, you don't belong in the material nature. You don't belong in this body, you belong in the spiritual world with Krishna in a spiritual body. That's Atma, Darshanam, self-realization. You get that knowledge through the Srimad Bhagavatam. And you only get that through Krishna consciousness, japa. So that's really what Srila Prabhupada had really described beautifully in his class last night. And I'm really glad I took this class today, so I got the opportunity to listen from him directly, what it is all about. Why we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam class, why you're sitting, devotees are sitting here every day. Actually, there's not many, but there's so many on YouTube, and then Mayapur TV, they have work lives or whatever busy lives they have, they come back and listen to these classes, all the Srimad Bhagavatam classes given by ISKCON devotees. And this is why we do it, and why we read it, why we listen to classes, because chanting is not enough. That's what Srila Prabhupada was saying. Chanting is not enough. You need to hear about the Srimad Bhagavatam. You need to hear about the strategies and tips on how to, improve your life and become more and more Krishna conscious and burn in the fire of Krishna consciousness. Then you live in the spiritual world, because you do not belong in the material world. That's self-realization, Atma Darshanam. And that knowledge goes to your heart, cuts the knots of attachment, which is what Devavati wants. That's what Kapil Dev is explaining. That's what Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining to us. Cut the knots of attachment. Okay, so that concludes the class for today. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions or comments? Yes. 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 Okay. Okay, so the question by Prabhu is there's a word ahur in the third line of this shloka, and the explanation ahur means they said. Now, who are they? That's what it is referring to. So let me just read this shloka and see what that means. So, Jnanam, knowledge for the ultimate perfection of a man, self-realization, which they said, I shall explain to you. Okay, so which they said. I think Srila Prabhupada in his class was, I shall explain that. Knowledge, I'm just trying to figure it out because I didn't pay much attention to that word. Knowledge for the ultimate perfection of a man, self-realization, which they said. Yes, it could be, which they said. I think so also. It's probably the questions that either Parikshit Maharaj was asking or those devotees were asking what it is. Because the word before that, or the shlok before that is about Purushasyatma Darshanam. In other words, Purusha is a man. Purush refers to the man. And the man is usually enjoying or seeking enjoyment. That's what really, Srila Prabhupada's class, I remember he mentioned the word Purusha. So he said they're enjoying, but what they really want to know is how to get the ultimate goal of life, those men who are enjoying. So I'm thinking that they said would be referring to these men, Purushas, who are questioning the ultimate goal of life, because the material enjoyment they get is not really satisfactory, I think. So they said would most likely mean, in any case, whoever is asking, whether it is those Purushas who are looking for enjoyment, but they want Atma Darshanam, they want self-realization, those Purushas. And here Prabhupada mentioned something really interesting too. He said even ladies are like the Purushas. Why? Because they have the mentality of the Purush. Ladies are Prakriti. But Prakriti means the material nature which is to be enjoyed. But the ladies are also like Purushas because they have the mentality of enjoyment too. They want enjoyment, material enjoyment as well. Of course, I want a nice, like a roof over my head, right? Some things to eat. These are, things that, or, friends or association, devotees. So the mentality is there, whether I'm a woman or a man. But I'm also looking for self-realization, Atma Darshanam. So I'm guessing they said would be people like me, like you, like the Purushas. And he also explained something that Purushas are also Prakriti. Why? Because they are enjoyed by Krishna. So in other words, the men, Prabhus, are also instruments that are enjoyed by Krishna. Because we are eternal servitors of Krishna. So everyone is Prakriti. Purushas are Prakriti also, like at our level. There is only one Purusha, the enjoyer, which is Krishna. Everybody else is enjoyed by Krishna, Prakriti. So I'm thinking, to answer your question, they said would mean people like yourself, me, whoever is looking for self-realization. Even Parikshit Maharaj here, who's questioning, who's looking for even Devahuti, who's looking for answers to how to be self-realized, how to absorb this knowledge, where to get this knowledge, and what is this knowledge going to do. So we kind of put it in a nutshell. Do you get the knowledge from perfect Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, and it goes to your heart, it cuts the knots of attachment. It also gives you realization of what the spiritual world is like, what the material world is like. You no longer want to enjoy in the material life, you want to go to the spiritual world. So I think it's kind of like all ties up together in a nice little ball. So I hope that answers the question somewhat. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
And then on the other side, we have the application of
Yes.
So sometimes we know the knowledge we don't apply it.
Right.
So what is it that obstructs us?
Okay. So the question is that we are searching for the knowledge, we got the knowledge, and then we have to make the application of that knowledge, right? But sometimes we don't. So what is the blockage or what stops us from applying this knowledge? I've only got one word for you, it's called desire. You don't want to do it. It's just like, your alarm clock goes off in the morning, 6 o'clock you have to wake up, 4 o'clock you have to wake up, 3:30 I don't think I'll wake up today. Switch off the alarm, go back to sleep. So the knowledge is there. I don't think I've got the desire to put it in application because I want to eat meat, because I want to drink liquor, because I don't want to chant, because I want to have illicit life, or because, I want to gamble, because I don't want to chant. It's desire, really. That's the biggest blockage of application of that knowledge is desire. That's what it is. And how to bring about that desire to apply it, because I know that, people are alone out there in this thing. When I started Krishna consciousness, I was pretty much by myself because my family never supported me because they were busy enjoying their rich people and they want their money and their houses and their $1 million houses and properties and cars. So they're not interested in helping me being Krishna conscious. In fact, they're stopping me from doing these things. So where am I going to get the desire for something that I don't even know is right or wrong? Don't even know if Krishna exists or not. Spiritual world exists or not. How do I apply this knowledge? So first of all, I had this, all the devotees, they start off with knowledge. Listen to Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita classes. But the desire comes through association because you have a higher, someone who is already practicing. Like my guru. I had association from my guru. And I also was lucky enough to meet Srila Prabhupada when I was small. He came to our shop. So I was fortunate enough to have that association from such a high level, even if it is in a very young age. But I met my guru, who is a representative of Prabhupada. So you need association. That's one thing. That will help you apply that knowledge. It will keep you afloat. And you've got to be prepared to listen also. Like if I say, put on your tilak, Prabhu, and you'll say, no, I don't want to. I don't want to listen. I don't have to listen to. Who are you to tell me? Well, then don't become a devotee if you don't want to. I mean, because the whole point, or shave up and have a sikha, or follow the 4 regulative principles our Guru Maharaj tells us. It goes on. So if you've got to be willing to practice, first of all, so the desire is there. Then you need the proper guidance association, which is devotees. You need to listen from the right sources. In his class yesterday, my spiritual master was saying, you can listen to the Srimad Bhagavatam on your own, or read on your own, but it's better to listen with devotees. Actually, that is more effective. So the application of knowledge comes easy or easier if you